Hello, I hope you are able to get me. If you are not able to get me, I want you to communicate through text. I'm reading your text. If you are not able to get me, I want to see your text in your text that you are not getting me. Those ones who were complaining that my voice is too low, let me get you now. If my voice is too low, let me get it. Yes, I'm waiting for your text to know if you are getting me. Dominic says that I'm too low. Is it? What about others? Others, I want to get because I want to get it from you. Am I too low? Yes, Dominic. Mercy says that I'm audible. Brian Ambei also says that I'm audible. Langat, you're okay. Dennis, keep Langat. You are the only one complaining. Yes. So can you adjust your? I want you to adjust your. Make sure that you adjust your gadget so that you get me the way others are getting me. Hello. So if you are getting me, that is fine. I want to ask. There are a few announcements that I want to make. I gave out questions. I gave out questions, and I'm sure you people are going on with those questions. I'm sure you are doing well with those questions. Um, I say that each group is supposed to have about three people. I want to address the concerns that some of you brought directly to me, and others brought through the class rep. This is what you are saying. You said, if I'm not wrong, you said that the way I'm giving those assignments, there are those who said that the way I'm giving those assignments, you are afraid that you will have supplementary. And my question is, who is this going to give you supplementary? Why are you talking of supplementary even before sitting for your exam? Yes? Why should you talk of a supplementary exam before you sit for the same? How can you talk of a supplementary exam before you sit for one? That is my question. How can you talk of a supplementary examination before sitting for it? Yes, Jacqueline Salome, you are saying that you are not getting me. Why? Why are you not getting me? Others are getting me. So I just adjust your phone. Just adjust your phone or your laptop. You will be able to get me. So what I'm trying to guard against is this idea of one student doing an exam and others copy pasting from them. I don't want that. I've been in this field for quite some time. I started teaching at the university in the year 2014, and we have never had a problem of people missing. People who have searched for their cards miss unless you don't follow instructions. But the moment you follow instructions, you will always have it. You will always have it. Let me hope that you people are getting my advice. I was also told through your class reps that you were waiting for the link. I don't know why one should wait for the link. I ask you people to subscribe to this YouTube channel so that anytime we have a class, you will just be notified. You don't have to struggle. You will just be notified. You will get a, a message, you will get a tip that the class is on, the live class is on, or a new thing has been posted, and you'll be good to go. So, can you kindly stop asking from the class rep on what you are supposed to do? You just subscribe and all will be well. The moment you subscribe, everything will be okay. Now, now there is somebody, this is Valerie Chepto, that are we supposed to pick a question from the groups? No. Those questions that I gave, I think I gave specific instructions. Class reps were to give or to identify the groups that were going to come first. Those people who were supposed to come first were the ones who were supposed to be given the opportunity to present or to plan for their work and present in class. So unless you have been identified or unless your group has been identified by the class rep, kindly don't attempt. I'll be giving more questions in these lectures. Now today, allow me talk about methodology in comparative education. Methodology in comparative education. So methods used to solve issues in comparative education are going to be discussed in this lesson. The debate about methodology of comparative education has been stimulated and problems. One of the functions of comparative education is to help us in problem solving. So you don't just learn comparative education. Remember, last time we dealt with the purpose or the purposes of comparative education to a teacher trainee. And today or tonight, I want to report to you that one of the functions of comparative education is to help us solve problems. You know, the problems associated with the 844 system of education have or are being solved through CBC. And who is coming up or who advises us on CBC? These are the comparative educationists. They are people who have studied comparative education in other nations or of other nations and are trying or have advised our government or our country that CBC is the way to go. Just like other social sciences, comparative education has been studied at different stages of its development with different methodologies, beginning with simple narrations or simple narratives of education abroad during the traveler's tales. The discipline methodological approach have been progressively evolved into the current application of sophisticated methods of the social sciences, which are empirically based due to the diverse clientele arising from its multidisciplinary nature. Comparative education has failed to develop a single universal or a universally accepted methodology of study. As a result, it is currently characterized by multiplicity of debates and opinions of what methods is best suited for the use. The founders of the discipline, and this one, when we talk about the founders of the discipline, we are talking about people such as Marc Antony, Julien de Paris. They have suggested a method of studying comparative education. And since then, several comparativists have suggested alternative methods of studying comparative education. So the debate about methodology of comparative education has been stimulated from time to time by the need to produce valid answers and better understanding of the education system, theory, practice, and problems. It became even more important after the Second World War when comparative education became involved more in finding solutions to the education problems of the contemporary era. In their effort to advise nations, countries, educational systems, and institutions have sought even more rigorous and vigorous from the best methods to use. The following, I want to mention quite a number of methods that comparative educationists use. Now, I want to advise those guys who are asking for notes. Notes ziko wapi, jamani. Can you shut up? Because I will not give you any notes. I'm not going to give any notes because I know. Can you stop asking questions or notes because you are just interfering with my flow of thinking or my flow of thought? So, there are three categories of methods that are used in comparative education. Three categories. Now, the first category is referred to as traditional methods of comparative education. Traditional methods of comparative education. The second category of methods in comparative education is regarded as social science perspective or social science methodology in comparative education. And lastly, we have a category in comparative education or they refer to as conventional methods of comparative education. Conventional methods of comparative education. Now, we want to start with the first category, and this is traditional methods. Traditional methods of comparative education involves one, descriptive methods, descriptive methods, and two, we have selective education borrowing, selective educational borrowing. So these methods, descriptive methods and selective education borrowing, are regarded as traditional methods in comparative education. Secondly, we have those methods that are referred to as social science methodology. Social science methodology. And this ones involves a historical approach to study of comparative education. Two, we have a philosophical approach to the study of comparative education. And lastly, we have sociological approach to the study of comparative education. So these ones, the three, are referred to as social science methodology in comparative education. Social science methodology in comparative education. And we have listed them here as historical methods, philosophical methods, and sociological methods. This is the second category of the methods. Now, we also have the last category, and this is what we are referring to as conventional methods in the study of comparative education. These conventional methods have referred to them as one, systematic area study approach. Systematic area study approach. And the second one is problem solving approach. Problem solving approach. And let me tell you, there is no exam that we will ever set that doesn't have a component of methods in comparative education. Among these methods that I'm mentioning now, one of them will be there in your exam. And I don't want to say which one, because that will be leakage. So make sure that you get methods. You can't go through comparative education without a proper study of methods in comparative education. Now, having listed those methods, allow me to start now discussing the traditional methods in comparative education. Now, the first method that I want to talk about is the descriptive methods. Descriptive method in studying comparative education. From the early times of the discipline development, the most noticeable aspect was that scholars went out to describe systems of education. I want to come up again. That from the early times of comparative education as a discipline, most comparative educationists went out to describe systems of education. This method had neither any methodology nor system nor details that it roots for the discipline. The method involves simple random surveys like those of Marco Polo, Tsang, Branch, and they had only some details of education systems of other countries. So they went out to describe systems of education in other countries. People like Herodotus in 484 BC to 425 BC, commentary of somebody like Stephanos in 430 to 355 BC, in his details of the training for the citizens of Persia. These are just some of the comparative educations who decided to describe methods or systems of education in different countries. We also had somebody, a scholar called Plato. Plato existed in the year 429 up to 448 BC. In his Republic Talks of Improvement of Society, he described some systems of education. We also had Cicero, 106 to 43 BC. We had Julian Caesar, who mentioned uh, a few things in different systems of education. These were the early descriptionists, early scholars, early comparative educationists who attempted to describe systems of education interested in educational systems. These people were just going out. For example, some of you may be interested in traveling to United States of America for other reasons other than education. So when the people were asking me to share my screen, and this is Enoch, Enoch, I'm not going to do that because you will simply screenshot. I want you to get it from my voice. So, what are we saying? We are saying that from the early times of comparative education as a discipline, there were the most noticeable elements of description. The most noticeable records show us that there are records of scholars who went out not necessarily for educational purposes. They had gone out for exploration, for other things. But on their way, they saw things, the way different societies were carrying out their education, and they decided to write things about the education systems. For example, if a journalist decides to travel to Samburu or to Lodwar or to West Pokot, and that journalist, for other reasons, decides now to describe whatever he sees, that one can be referred to as description. So, what we are saying is that in early times, and remember the years that I'm quoting, these are BC, before Christ, there were travelers who went out outside their countries, outside their continent. They went out for exploration just to see the world. And as they traveled, they decided to do what? To describe what they were seeing, what they saw. So, some of the things that they described were related to education. So, they decided to describe what they saw those societies teaching, the content, the subjects, how they treated their young ones. So those descriptions are the ones that we are referring to as a descriptive methodology of study or of studying comparative education. I'm keeping your records. Those ones who are attending, I'm keeping your records. I know your names. Cheriot, you are there. Brian Kipto, you are there. Ngetich, you are there. Valerie Koech, you are there. We have, so I know your names. I'm keeping the records of those ones who are attending. Allow me to move and talk about the second one, and talk about selective education borrowing. This is a second methodology in the study of comparative education. It is also one of the traditional methods in comparative education. So, selective education borrowing involves the comparison of descriptive data in form of legislative details, statistics, and description, which form the basis of comparison. Pioneers, pioneers in the discipline. When we talk about the pioneers in the discipline, we are talking about the first people, the first people who came up with information about comparative education. People like Julius Caesar, people like Julian. These are the pioneers in comparative education. So we are saying that selective education borrowing involves the comparison of descriptive data in the form of legislative details, statistics, description, which form the basis of comparison. And we're saying that these pioneers used the method during the time referred to as the pioneer phase of comparative education. Their main aim was to facilitate transplantation of education systems and to promote understanding among nations through sharing of educational information among them. Their approach calls for the task of education fact finding and enlightenment through abstracting educational statistics and presenting them in charts for comparison. For example, comparison of the organizations and methods of some of the materials to be collected may be historical and descriptive. Experiences may help in the investigation of education practice in their countries. Thus, personal experience allied with the social outlook will combine to give one of the conclusion about an educational system. This approach involves looking what people in other countries are doing. If what other people are doing in their countries were done in their country, were they the same, different? What is good in other people's country systems of education? What are the strengths and weaknesses in other people's system of education? What is positive and what is negative? So that they they can avoid the negatives in other people's systems of education and take the strength or borrow the strength and use them in their own country. Now, I want to explain this selective education borrowing. For example, at the moment, we are implementing CBC in Kenya. Remember, we are not the first country to implement CBC. CBC has been tried in other countries. For example, Finland, countries such as Russia, countries such as China, Japan. These are the countries that have already implemented CBC. So, comparative educationists will go to such countries and study their system of education. For example, we can send comparative educationists to a country like China. They go there, they study the Chinese um, system of education. And in the Chinese system of education, these comparative educationists will be interested in knowing the weaknesses and the strength in Chinese uh, uh, CBC education. So that when they come back to Kenya, they may inform our Kenyan government that this is what is successfully. Let us try and avoid these weaknesses, these negatives. They also will also report on the strength of CBC in China, and they will advise our government that now for us to successfully implement this CBC education, let us uh, let us capitalize on this strength. So that is selective education borrowing. So this group of persons from modern comparative education was predominantly educational politicians, experts, and activists. You remember, in the implementation of this CBC, these people who have been pushing have been politicians. And just to mention a few, we have politicians such as Matiang'i, the former CS for Education, and also the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta. These are the politicians who have been pushing for the implementation of CBC. And that is why we are saying that uh, selective education borrowing is normally pushed by politicians, educationists, experts, and activists. So often they traveled not at their own expenses or following their private interests, but as emissaries for their own countries. So they concern themselves with educational theory, methodology, finance, and organization, teacher training, institutional methodology, and alternatives to educational to the educational theory and practice, so that when they come back, they allow. This is what I'm saying, Alphonse. This is what I'm saying. I'm saying that the group, this group of educationists, the selective education borrowers, when they travel abroad, they don't travel at their own expense. They use public resources. So if we want to borrow something from Finland, we will send a group of selective educational borrowers who will go there at the expense of our government. They study how those people are financing their education. They will look at the structure, they look at the subjects, they look at the content, they will look at teacher training. How do those people train their teachers? They will look at how teachers teach, the methods of teaching. They will look at the materials that teachers use to teach. They will look at the successes in that education system. They will look at the failures in that education system. They will look at the age of the learners, so that when they come back, they report the same. And they will advise. Benjamin, I know you are there. Don't insist. Don't ask for your name to be mentioned. I know you are there. I'm saving. I'm screenshotting your names. So I know you are there. You are very many people. I've not mentioned others. You are very many people. You are 105. That's what I know. Those people who are attending this class are 105, and I've saved their names. So this is what I'm saying. When they come back, they report to us. They report to our country that this is what happens there, so that we learn the weaknesses in their systems and we try to avoid them, so that we don't face the same problems. We also look at the strength in their weaknesses, and we see how we can implement the good things that we have borrowed in their system. That is the essence of selective education borrowing. There are very many things in Kenyan system of education that were borrowed from UK, as you people will learn later on. Now, allow me to stop there so that next time when we meet, tomorrow when we meet, we shall talk about other methods of comparative education. But for now, I'm asking you, each one of you, to subscribe to this YouTube channel so that anytime we have a class, we will not have to ask the class rep about the link, and you will not wait to be notified by the class rep, but you will just be notified by YouTube itself. Have a good evening, good supper. Rose Riza, I hear you. Cornelius Coril, Dennis Kemboi, Dominic Kipto. I get you loud and clear, Chepkoich. Elvis Kibet, I get whatever you are saying. But tomorrow we are meeting in class between 5 up to 7, and we shall say more. Otherwise, have a nice evening. Bye.